So we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we are so excited because today is Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everybody. And so as we are highlighting conservation around the world with all our programs, we're really excited today because we are diving in on a completely unique venture for us. We are joined by Danielle, part of the Friends of the Rouge Watershed, and she is going to take us on a virtual tree planting out in the wilds of Scarborough in Eastern Ontario, Eastern Toronto. And I'm so excited to be joined by her. Their organization has worked with over 65,000 volunteers since they were founded. They've planted over 750,000 trees. But as I said, we've never done one live on our broadcast. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle, and take us away.
Thank you, Jesse, and hello, everyone. Happy Earth Day. I hope it's not too windy for us here today. Just let me know, Jesse, if you can, if it gets too windy. Today, I'm going to be teaching us how to do a tree planting, but first, I should do a little introduction. So my name is Danielle. I'm the Environmental Project Coordinator here at Friends of the Rouge Watershed, or FRW for short. FRW is a small charitable environmental organization, and we're based out of the Rouge River Watershed and National Park near Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Today it is Earth Day's 50th anniversary, so it's a big celebration today. Earth Day is really all about bringing community awareness and action for the environment to protect our planet, to protect our health, and to protect our future. However, this Earth Day is a little different for everyone. Usually I'm out here planting with hundreds of students and community volunteers to celebrate Earth Day, but this year we're doing a virtual session. And I'm really happy that you're still able to join me in planting of trees to celebrate Mother Earth. So today we're going to plant a tree. We're going to talk a little bit as well about the need to restore and protect natural areas around the world, especially in the Rouge right now today, because I'm in the Rouge, because we're going to be able to combat climate change, reduce flooding and pollution, and protect biodiversity and human health by doing these types of initiatives. Now, before I begin, I would like to do a land acknowledgement to respect that the Indigenous peoples who have lived on and taken care of this land for thousands of years. The Rouge River Watershed and National Park are part of the traditional territories of several First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada actually has outlined a number of actions that need to be implemented in order to repair damages caused by colonization. So I have a few things to show you before we begin. FRW was founded in 1991, and our main drive is actually to promote the scientific and community-based advocacy, environmental planning, protection, and restoration. Since 1991, we have involved thousands of volunteers to help create and implement management plans to restore and protect natural areas here in the Rouge, including the Rouge Watershed Plan, the National Park Plan, as well as the Ontario Greenbelt Plan. Among these volunteers, we've actually had over 65,000 school and community participants come out. As Jesse mentioned, we planted nearly 750,000 trees, shrubs, and wildflowers over this time. These plants today are helping Mother Nature to restore 3.5 million square meters of forest, wetland, and meadow habitat in the Rouge to combat climate change, reduce flooding and pollution here, and improve biodiversity and human health. So we're quite happy about that. We have received many awards as well, including the J.R. Diamond Award from Ontario Nature for our exceptional on-the-ground stewardship, as well as our inspirational role in the creation of the Rouge National Park. So I have some photos to show you that show the evidence of the results of our work. This is an example of a meadow. I'm not sure how well you can see this today, but if you can't see it too well, you can check them out on our website and social media after at Friends of the Rouge Watershed. So this wildflower meadow was planted by children and community volunteers in 2009. Just 3 short years later, the meadow is a diverse habitat for many pollinators like bees, butterflies, and birds. Here's an example of our forest restoration in Bob Hunter Memorial Park in Markham, Ontario. Bob Hunter was actually named after the co-founder of Greenpeace. This forest restoration took place over 8 years. So this is the photo from 2008. And just 8 short years later, in 2016, you can see a diverse, flourishing forest is thriving. One of our favorite sites is the Beer Wetland in the Rouge National Park. The Beer Wetland is home now to a diversity of species, including turtles like the Blandings turtle, which is actually endangered, amphibians, a number of frogs and newts. We actually have mammals like river otters and beaver here. This diverse network of wetlands was originally a barren soil pit next to a landfill or a garbage dump. The soil was actually extracted from this pit to be placed on the garbage, and it was left devoid of any nature. But with the help with volunteers like yourselves, we've dug wetlands, built berms to plant on, and planted thousands of native plants. The forests and wetlands and meadows that we've planted with your help over the past almost 30 years are now helping to absorb carbon, water, and pollution and reduce the effects of climate change right here in the Rouge for people who live nearby and around the world. The effects are also very positive. They help to restore runoff from big storms. So the forests we're planting actually help to infiltrate stormwater into underground pools called aquifers. The water that's stored in these aquifers will help to stabilize lake and river water levels in the event of a drought or dry periods. They're also providing really diverse habitat. The Rouge is home to 1,700 different species of plants and animals, including 30 species at risk. So these forest, wetlands, and meadows are connecting habitat and providing greater size and quality of habitat. So today, in honor of Earth Day, I know most people know it's Earth Day, but you might not know what the theme is this year. The theme of Earth Day is climate action. So in order to take climate action today, I'm going to be doing a tree planting. We started already because we've had quite a few trees provided to us by the City of Toronto. Thank you. And we are planting on the Lois James property, thanks to her daughter Dolores. So I wanted to thank you for that. Lois James is actually known as the mother of the Rouge. She started the Save the Rouge movement decades ago with the help of many other community groups and citizens to advocate to save the Rouge. Originally, the Rouge was announced in 1990 as a park by the Ontario government, and it is now a Rouge National Park. The size has been increased to 79 square kilometers, making it the largest urban park in North America, which is a great success. So we're planting a tulip tree in honor of Lois today. The tulip tree is unique because it is a Carolinian species. For those who don't know what the Carolinian forest is, this is a zone that goes along the east coast of North America. And in Canada, the Carolinian forest exists only here in southern Ontario. So the Rouge is like a bridge for where the Carolinian forest meets the northern forest type. So the tulip tree is one of these Carolinian species. In the Carolinian forest zone, it's actually home to 20% of Canada's species at risk. Yet in Canada, less than 1% of the Carolinian forest zone is protected in provincial and national parks, which is why it's so important that we need to protect and restore more natural area here in the Rouge Park. So the first step to planting a tree is digging a hole, but I didn't want you folks to watch me struggling with digging a hole this morning. So we took care of that already. Now, when you're digging a hole for your tree, you want to make sure that the hole is just about as deep as the pot that your tree came in. So just about this deep. My hole is a little too deep, so I'm gonna throw some soil back in to make sure it's nice and level. We'll try that out. That should be fairly good, yes. Now you'll probably notice this piece of plastic that is wrapped around my tree, and you'll be wondering why I have this here. This is actually a rodent guard. Rodent guards help to protect the tree stem on baby trees from attack of other rodents like voles and rabbits, things that we have a lot of here in the Rouge. So this will help protect the tree while it's growing. Next step is you want to fill the soil. One of the misconceptions I always deal with when I'm planting with folks is that the soil should be thrown on top of the tree. In fact, that is not the correct way to plant a tree and make sure it's nice and snug. Here in Toronto, it is actually still a little cold out. There was snow on the ground this morning. So we want to make sure the tree is tucked in nice and tight to provide it a nice warm growing spot for when spring officially arrives here in Toronto. So I wrap the soil around the tree, but not on top. Now I have some loose, good quality soil up here. I'm going to try to use this. placing it around. The workload is a little easier today for Earth Day when it's virtual. Usually we're planting hundreds of trees, and I just have a few here today.
Danielle, if possible, we could get someone to come a little closer to see what's going on up close. That's okay.
Yeah. Fred, would you like to come a little bit closer with the camera? Thank you so much. So when I've wrapped the soil around the tree, I really need to tuck it in and get it nice and tight. So that's where I kind of lock my hands and keep them nice and straight. And I press in the crevices all the way around. And I press really hard to get that really tucked in. And then fill in the new gaps. There we go. She should be tucked in nice and tight. I want to make sure she's straight as well. I think I did pretty good. Yeah, she's all right. So that's a tulip tree, nice and planted. Later today, I'm going to bring some of this wood chip mulch here. Mulch is really good for multiple reasons. It will give my tree a little bit of a blanket from the cold and warm the roots. But it also blocks the sunlight for any weeds that might want to grow through, or grasses that want to compete with my baby tree. So I'll make sure to put a nice blanket of mulch around the tree. Now, all the trees we receive from the city of Toronto are actually different species. So I wanted to highlight a few of the different species. Here I have an eastern redbud tree. This tree is actually a Carolinian species as well. So we're really happy to be able to plant these Carolinian species here on the James property because they fought so hard to protect this Carolinian forest habitat. I have a number of shrubs. This is a serviceberry, and this is a choke cherry tree. You can see the serviceberry is already starting to bloom. These are going to provide really good flowers and berries to feed the pollinators and birds. So they're a good tree or shrub, sorry, to mix in. A few others I want to highlight. Where did they go? This is my white birch or paper birch, which is a common tree in North America. It grows really white strippy bark that people rip off and you can write on it like paper. That's why it's called the paper birch. And the First Nations people in Canada actually use paper birch to create canoes. So this is a significant tree in Canada. And one more that's my absolute favorite. This is the eastern white pine tree. The white pine is a glorious tree and it will grow very quickly. You can see the difference between the branches here. That's 1 year of growth. So in 10 years, this will be quite a significant tree. This is also the tree of Ontario. So it's our provincial tree here. And I love being able to plant them. Also, while we're back here, I might as well show you the Rouge River. So this is the Rouge River behind me. It's what the watershed and park are named after. You can see there's quite a lot of erosion action happening here along the river this year. And this is because a lot of development is occurring upstream. A lot of the forests and wetlands are being removed and they're not being replaced properly. So when a big storm or snow belt comes, the water flow here is so high, it is eroding and flooding the land nearby. So this year there's been a lot of changes happening in the Rouge. All right, we can head back over. So I have a map here to show you of the Rouge Park. As I mentioned, it is a 79 square kilometer park. It's the only national urban park in Canada and the largest in North America. It ranges from Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes, all the way north to the Oak Ridges Moraine in Stouffville and Uxbridge, which is actually a glacial deposit. As mentioned, the Rouge National Urban Park is a really unique park because it is in Canada's most populous region next to our largest city. Yet I forgot to mention that it's actually one of the most biodiverse parks in Canada. So you might not expect that in our most urban area. But that is why this park needs to remain natural and protected because it's holding many of our species, 1,700 to be exact, as I mentioned. The Environment Canada says a healthy watershed should have 60% forest and wetland cover to support biodiversity and clean water and combat climate change. Unfortunately, the Rouge Park is only at 38% forest and wetland cover. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. We're hopeful that in the next few decades, we can involve school and community volunteers like yourselves to help us and help federal government and Parks Canada to restore natural areas here in the Rouge, to prevent climate change effects here, and also prevent flooding and erosion and promote biodiversity and human health. There are a few things you can do from home today to help us out, take climate action from home while we're social distancing, and also help out in the Rouge. I know many of you are not from nearby, but you can still help out. Sorry, one sec. Trying not to cough. Yeah, so the first thing you can do, you can help us plant more native plants. The United Nations has actually called for the planting of 1 trillion trees, over 1 billion hectares of forest habitat to help prevent the effects of climate change. Native plants are really important. They provide biodiversity, the habitat they need to thrive, and they also connect habitat throughout your neighborhood. If you don't have a backyard, you can plant native plants on your balcony, on your doorstep, in your windowsill, whatever works. Just help us out and take part, and it's fun to grow as well. Some other things you can do, the 3 R's. We all remember those from kindergarten. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Reduce your consumption and reduce your garbage waste. We can eat less red meat because that causes a lot of emissions. And we could also write a letter to our local representatives. A lot of people are hesitant to do this, but we really support it here at FRW. If you visit our website, rougenationalparkfriends.com, we have a letter drafted to send to the Prime Minister of Canada, local MPs and ministers, that asks the federal government and Parks Canada to restore natural habitat and area here in the Rouge. And this letter, you could copy and paste it into an email, but we've also programmed a button that if you click it, your email will open and all the recipients will be there. All you have to do is copy and paste the letter in, adjust it as you see fit, and send it on. That would really support us to help get those that target of 60% forest and wetland cover here in the Rouge National Park going. And that is all. So I guess we'll open up the floor now for a question period.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for that awesome presentation. Again, we've never done anything like that. That was really cool. We have over 130 people watching from across Canada, the US, and more, North Dakota, Minnesota, across Ontario, and a lot in the Toronto area. So it's so fantastic having you guys all in. Freddie, make sure you get your finger off the camera. So yes, type questions in the chat bar, people. I'll also check Slido for questions. We're going to start with one, Danielle, from Miss Gary, joining us in Woodbury, Minnesota. And she wants to know, do you add fertilizer to the soil, or do you that you put around the tree, or do you just water it and let Mother Nature do its work?
That is a good question. Most of the time when we are tree planting, we're renaturalizing natural wild areas. We do return to maintain the plantings by watering, remulching, but most of the time we do not add fertilizer because we don't really want to tamper anymore with the wild environment.
Okay, very cool. Let's go to Miss Air and her kids, and she might be able to ferry a question from her students as well at Jenner Crevar and Scarborough. So yeah, hi, Miss Air. Go for it.
Hi everybody all over North America. It's so awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. We wondered, both my family and I'm watching the YouTube live questions coming in from General Crevar. What are some of the native plants people could plant on their balcony?
That is a good question. It depends. I know we have people tuning in from all over, so I don't want to just prescribe a few. It does depend where you are. Here in Ontario, we have a number of native wildflowers and smaller shrubs that will help provide pollinator habitat on your balcony. For example, even small chokecherries or smaller service berries could be planted in a small front garden. We have flowers like milkweed, dense blazing star. We have wild bergamot, things like that that provide good pollinator habitat that are native to where you are. But depending on your state or province or country, you might want to look a little bit more into what your native wildflowers are, because I wouldn't want to recommend planting something that is not native to your area.
Right. We've actually had another presentation recently with Peter Soroyi. He's a pollinator expert, so he talked about some of the wildflowers you guys can plant if you check out his session on our YouTube channel as well. All right, let's go to Ms. Gudmundson, joining us from North Dakota. If you have a question from one of your students or from yourself or your kids, I can unmute you and go for it.
Yes, thank you for having us. This is really fun, Danielle. You're doing a great job. So what climate, or what's the yeah, I should say not the climate, but the code for planting those trees. Like I live in the second, what do you call that?
Like a climate region or like
Yes,
a
climate
region?
region, that's what it is. Pretty simple. But what climate is Toronto in? What's your region for planting?
That is a great question. I actually don't know a code for what climate we're in. We're in the mixed wood plains ecozone. So this is a zone that spreads across North America, and maybe that would provide you a little more insight. I'm not sure of the climate code though. Jesse, any insight?
Yeah, I'm looking this up as we're speaking. So it says semi-continental climate in Toronto, but I don't quite know. So we'll try and find that answer for you, Ms. Covington, a little later, but that's a great question. So
Thank you.
Yeah, different regions around the world, and Canada and the US have a lot. We'll have different sort of timings and parts of the year where you'll be planting plants. So do check that out before you guys start planting, and that's just a great note for everyone to have. All right. Miss Ardelian wants to ask on YouTube, Rouge means red. Is there an explanation why the river is called the Rouge River, and was there another indigenous name for it?
That is a great question too. The Rouge River has actually gone through a number of names since its first naming, which happened many hundreds of years ago. It actually has multiple indigenous names as well. And I can't remember all of them, so I just prefer not to say. But the last name it had was the River Nen, about 100 or 200 years ago. It was never red in color, and I'm not sure. I've talked to my boss and many of our volunteers about the naming of the Rouge over the years, and we're not sure exactly why it's named Rouge, but it is a popular river name across North America. I know that for sure.
Fantastic, Danielle. All right, by the way, YouTube has answered our question with tons of people writing in Zone 5 very enthusiastically. So we are in Zone 5. Who knew?
Zone 5.
All right. We got a question from Roberts in Tucson, Arizona, and he wants to know, why are trees so important to our Earth? No pressure.
Oh, fantastic. There's a number of reasons for why trees are important to our Earth. I mean, the biggest reason, and the reason why the United Nations is naming this decade the decade of ecological restoration, is because trees are helping to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. As we know, climate change is occurring because of human activities like burning fossil fuels that result in the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And trees are a powerhouse. They're a free machine to help us absorb that carbon dioxide. And even better, they produce oxygen in exchange, which we need to survive and breathe. So I'd say that's the number one reason, but there are so many others as well.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. By the way, all the questions that we're asking that we're not quite able to answer, everyone's answering on YouTube, which is amazing and has never happened before. So like, we got some really smart people tuning in. And I appreciate
Excellent.
it.
Great.
All right, let's go to Miss Huxley's group representing Queen Street Public School in Brampton. Hi, Miss Huxley. Welcome back.
Hi, Brampton.
Good morning. Good morning. I have a grade 5 group in Brampton here, and they are absolutely loving it. It's just that we're still continuing this. We've been involved with these presentations quite a bit over the school year. Dia would like to know approximately how many different species of trees would be along the Rouge River Valley.
Right. There's a couple hundred. So in total, we have 1,700 species of animals and plants. I know there's at least 300 to 600 species. I know that's not a very definitive answer, but it's quite diverse. Today, I planted 10 different species.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, this is something that's come up the whole track of your presentation, but basically the idea that there's such diversity sort of in a major city in Canada, one of the major cities in North America, is incredible. And so this is something for all our teachers and people tuning in live, do something near you, whether it's a local park or your backyard. There's more diversity and sort of amazing creatures out there than you ever thought possible, which is really cool.
For sure. Jesse, I will also mention, because we are in the Rouge, we're actually in the mix of the Carolinian zone, which is from the south and the Carolinas and the East Coast. Okay. And north of us is the Great Lakes St. Lawrence ecozone. So in the Rouge and southern Ontario, that's why we have this great level of biodiversity. We're in a blending zone. We have double of everything. It's great.
Lucky us. All right. A great question from someone online. So Folkway Music wanted to ask, is anyone allowed to plant trees in Rouge Park? So do they have to be part of a program with a group like yours, or can they just go and start planting trees? How does that work?
To plant trees in most parks, depending on where you are, you do need permission. So Friends of the Rouge Watershed, we're actually working with the City of Toronto to plant on lands adjacent to the Rouge National Park this year. So we plant in the greater Rouge Watershed. In the past, we have planted in the National Park as well, but as the National Park is relatively new and they are still figuring out their management plan and their goals for planting, we and other NGOs have not been planting in the National Park. So we have permission and permits from the City of Toronto to plant outside. Either way, if you're planting on public land, you need permission, likely from somebody, but you could check out also planting on your own private property.
Yeah,
or join a
fantastic.
group like us. Yeah.
So wherever you are in Canada or the US, go to a place and work with an organization like the Friends of the Rouge Watershed. They'll have those permits, they'll have that application, and then you can get involved in a bigger project and learn more, like this presentation is highlighting today. All
Exactly.
right. Nadine wants to know on Slido, is there a lot of difference between the species in the north and south of Rouge Park? It's a huge park, so.
Yeah, actually there is. So I believe the temperature change from the south of the Rouge Park, which is near Lake Ontario, it's actually quite a lot warmer there compared to the north of the Rouge Park, which is on a highland, which is Oak Ridge's Moraine, a big mound, a glacial deposit left from the last ice age. So the temperature changes around 10 degrees, and in exchange, you will see more of the Carolinian species towards the southern edge of the park, like the tulip tree and like the eastern redbud tree.
Fantastic. All right. Quick note before I start taking more questions. For our live teachers joining from Toronto, North Dakota, and more, if you have more questions, let me know in the chat bar at the bottom of your screen, and I'll pass along and come back to you guys. But I love this question from Miss Langer in Cobourg, Ontario. She wants to know, why do you plant trees in a forested area? Do they not just reproduce themselves there?
Fantastic question. Yes. So usually we do not plant trees in a forested area. And actually, when I bring groups out and we end up in a field or some degraded landscape that has no trees growing nearby, people are often surprised and they expected to come out and join me in the forest for the tree planting day. But the reason why, as you mentioned, the trees are regenerating in the forest. And as such, they don't really need our help as much as a degraded landscape would. Today, we're actually planting on the property of someone who made a great significant change in the Rouge. But I will point out, it looks like I'm planting in a forest. All of these trees behind me are native red pines, but they're actually all dead or dying. And the forest here is not regenerating. So we found a clearing that needs more help regenerating the forest, and we're planting there today. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. I love this question from Ben, who's 5, and he wants to know, why would a tree become unrooted? What are some of the dangers to our trees and forests?
Hey, Ben, thank you for the question. A lot of the time when a tree becomes unrooted, it is because of wind action and erosion. I'm not sure if you're looking at a particular tree behind me that might have become unrooted, but as I mentioned, there is a lot of erosion happening from the Rouge River this year, especially because of the amount of development upstream, which means that a lot of new neighborhoods, industries are being built upstream from here, and the trees and wetlands that usually absorb stormwater when it storms here are not there any longer. So all of the water is coming downstream and it's hitting on the edge of the cliff here, which is eroding it away and causing the trees to fall over. Now, yesterday we had a particularly windy day, and when the wind combines with that erosion action, the trees are much more likely to fall over and uproot. That's a good question.
Very good question. All right, I'm going to go back to Ms. Ayer's group, and then I'll take a couple more on YouTube before we wrap up. So,
amazing.
Guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to see the people in the YouTube chat bar joining in from General Career in Scarborough, Ontario. And I just want to say to the other General Career teachers tuning in live, just raise your hand to Jesse if you have a question on behalf of your students. We have a question from here at home. Go ahead, Silva.
How do the plants get sun through the window?
Sorry, I can't hear so well.
The question was, if we plant plants as you suggested on our balcony or our window, how are they going to get sunlight?
Yeah,
that is a great question. Depending on where you are, for example, my house faces south, which I know is the direction that gets the most sunlight here in Toronto. I would put my plants on the south window because it just lasts the longest and most sun comes in for the day. But depending on where you are, you might just want to find the sunniest room in your house and use that windowsill, or use the balcony that you have if that's all you got. But I think either way, the plants will be happy you're planting them and taking care of them.
Fantastic. All right. By the way, huge thank you to Carolyn on our YouTube channel, who's been answering a lot of the more detailed questions too, and some of the native history of Rouge Park as well, which is really exciting. A question we've had from a bunch of people on YouTube, and you guys mentioned getting your trees from the city of Toronto. Are there organizations that generally donate trees to organizations, or is this usually a municipal thing?
We just for this planting, our trees came from the city of Toronto, from a nursery actually called Conan that the city of Toronto uses. So usually we grow through organizations called nurseries, which are the places that grow trees. We usually use between 10 and 12 different nurseries each year to locate our trees, and there are local nurseries to make sure that the trees have been grown in the same environment they will be living in. So it depends. There's a ton of local nurseries nearby. I also know, depending on where you are, there may be some local charities that help get groups like ours access to trees, but usually those trees originally come from a nursery.
Fantastic. All right. I know we could go all day, and we are having more questions than we could possibly cover in a session, but what I want to do is take one last one. And Danielle, I know this would differ for different places around Canada and the States, but we do have a lot of people in the general Toronto area. And so they wanted to ask, Miss DeMaio's class wanted to ask, is there a best time of year to plant trees?
Really good question. So if you are in the Toronto area, you should look into, when schools get back up and running, booking a field trip with Friends of the Rouge, and we plant trees in the spring and in the fall. Now, the reason why, the summers here are very hot, and oftentimes the tree roots will not like to grow and start their growing phase in the soil in a very hot soil. So we plant in the spring when the trees right now, they're just coming out of their dormancy, which means the roots are just waking up and they're about to approach spring and really start growing, or in the fall when the tree roots are stopping their growth and slowing because they just don't grow that well in the summer. It's too hot.
There you go. All right, Danielle, before we wrap up, so again, we've had such great interaction. It's quite amazing, actually. For people that want to learn more about your organization and what you guys do, or just get inspired to take action on Earth Day and throughout the year in planting trees and conservation, is there any place you recommend that we can send them?
Yes, if you'd like to learn more about us, our website is frw.ca, like Friends of the Rouge Watershed.ca. We also have social media, so you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's a simple tag for all three, or handle, sorry, at FR Watershed. So again, frw.ca or FR Watershed.
Amazing. I've linked those into the chat bar on YouTube, so you can check those out. For now, what I want to do is demute every one of our teachers' microphones, and if they could join me in saying a huge thank you to you, Danielle, for joining us today. You are all now demuted. Go for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. Happy Earth Day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We still appreciate everyone joining from across Toronto, North Dakota, Arizona, Minnesota, and beyond. Danielle, this was fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us for Earth Day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, folks. I hope you have a great Earth Day and you do what you can. Take climate action from home today and stay in touch.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you all soon.